Hello challengers, welcome back. This is the custom scenario editor series, and today we'll be focusing on the players tab. So map and terrain obviously allows you to create all the aesthetics, put in all your trees, all your environment. Players now gets into focusing on who's actually playing the game and what they have access to before the game has even started. So in here, the first thing you would do is go to the number of players. I am going to select 3 players, and now I have 3 players that I can use in units. The window above that allows me to edit a specific player. So I'm going to start by editing player 1. First and foremost, you can choose their color. I'm going to leave player 1 as blue. I'm going to give player 1 1,000 food and 1,000 gold, and they're going to have 0 stone and 0 wood when they start the game. I'm going to give them, this is their maximum population limit, I'm going to set it to 50. And base priority is the final box. That is useful for multiplayer games where you want to create the order in which the computer allocates players. So obviously a higher priority number, well, a lower priority number, 1 for instance, 2, 3, will get players allocated to them first before 4, 5, 6. You'll probably see this in standard games as well in the settings. You can also choose the starting age. So for this, if I select feudal age for instance, that means every dark age technology will have been researched, and they'll enter the feudal age with no technologies researched, unless of course I change that in triggers. In tribe name, you can create the name for that team. I'll call this team Challenger, and name string ID. This is useful for importing or exporting data. This again is a little bit more complicated than just this tutorial. We may go into that in a future tutorial. You can then choose the personality. These are the personality types that have been generated through the various versions of Age of Empires. So you can select the different AIs. You've got the HD version, the AI version from the CD. So the CD I think was the very first version of Age of Empires, and the standard. We're going to leave it on standard because that's the definitive edition personality type for AI. So it's probably the most up to date and complex. So you can choose who's going to play this player. You can choose to have it just as an AI or as an either. Either just means a human can play it or a AI can play it. You might as well just leave every player on either, unless the player is, I don't know, a lesser character in your campaign, then maybe leave it as AI so no one can play that character. Civilization is as you would expect. It sets the civilization of that player. If you want that player to have to be that civ, then you can select lock civ, and now they can no longer change their civilization. This is useful because when you create a campaign in the campaign editor, and when people go to play the game, they can actually choose their civ, and they can choose their team, etc. So by clicking lock civ, you just disable their ability to make those changes. And finally, you can choose the architecture. Again, really useful if you want them to have a certain aesthetic or style, so it just kind of makes things a little more interesting. The final thing here allows you to actually swap players. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to player 2. I'm going to give player 2 1 bit of wood, 1 bit of stone, and a population limit of 15. So what I can do now is go, I want to swap player 2 with player 1. Selecting swap players, you'll now see that player 2 has gained all the assets of player 1, And if I go to player 1 now has all the assets of player 2. As it sounds, I'll switch them over. And so you would have just witnessed a very seamless transition. I just had a little thought as I was doing that video. What would happen if you had 3 players and then you changed to 2 players? Would that remove player 3? So I'm just going to do that now. I'm changing the total number of players from 3 to 2. Clearly it hasn't removed player 3, but we'll chuck it. We'll test the scenario and just see what happens. Right. And it appears 3 just does not enter the game. Yeah. Alright, well, that was useful to know at least. And then I'm assuming if I go back to players and add player 3 back to the game, player 3 should then be back into the scenario. Well, it looks pretty good so far. And yes, we are right. So that is what happens if you change the total number of players after you've actually already placed players. I will see you guys in the next video when we look into the units tab.